Okay, I'll make a couple intro remarks, but the purpose of tonight is to really connect with you all out there watching and engage with you all, albeit digitally. So first of all, I hope everybody is safe and warm and hopefully has heat. It's been an interesting week in Portland. Unlike Ted Cruz, though, we did not go to Cancun. We are here. We are happy to be with you tonight. And looking forward to this and what, it's promising to be a really amazing 2021 Portland Thorns season. Just a couple words about last year. Obviously, pretty brutal year for everybody. For us, with the Thorns, it was certainly no exception. We were in the crosshairs of everything COVID, and financially it was catastrophic. We are on the heels of about $90 million of debt to build the new expansion on the stadium, and we lost half that last year, and we'll lose half that again this year. And so but we're also very cognizant of the fact that we're in a position to weather that, and so many others aren't. And it's been hard on everybody across the board, and more so than the financial piece, that the sort of the psychic piece is missing our lifeblood, which is you. And more than ever, I think playing in an empty stadium, it just feels so bizarre, and without the pulsating rhythm and feeling and energy that you all provide, and so I can't tell you how much we've missed you. I also can't tell you how much we thank you, because in difficult times, we really understand, who has your back, whether it's employees who are dealing with extraordinary circumstances, players who are dealing with extraordinary circumstances, and our fans as well. You all tuned in for our games in record numbers. The ratings were phenomenal for the Challenge Cup, and in fact, all across the board in NWSL. Great many of you, despite your own financial hardships, were willing to renew and not get refunds on your tickets. And we just can't thank you enough from the bottom of all of our hearts for that absolutely amazing support. We had made a lot of changes on the Thorns, and we've been the best, sort of the flag bearer off the field, and for a large part we've been the best on the field. We've got 2 championships and we've got a supporters shield, but we've fallen behind for a couple years, and that's not gonna happen anymore. And I think we've made some amazing changes, and to say that I and everybody else am eager to see the fruits of those labor, that labor bear itself out in front of you. I mean, this is going to be a dynamic, amazing team, and we're looking forward to hoisting cups again. Just a quick word on the NWSL. A lot of leagues struggled with ratings. I already mentioned the Challenge Cup ratings that were historically high for the NWSL. In addition, we added 2 clubs during a pandemic. We've got a commissioner who's had a really amazing impact on the league. So I'm actually quite bullish on what's happening in the NWSL and women's soccer. And I would hate to imagine what COVID-19 would have done to the league, had it happened maybe 3 or 4 years earlier. But it's a credit to everybody involved that this league is where it is right now, and that it continues to grow. So I'll shut up. That's enough of an intro from me, and then Colin, you let us know how you want to start fielding questions.
Yeah, just another reminder for those joining us late. The way in which you can ask a question is to hit that Q&A button on the bottom right. Go ahead and type your question in there, and I will get to as many as we can. And we will start with John Laws. John, please raise your hand. This is for Mark. It's a technical question. Tactical question. Here we go. Go ahead, John.
Yeah. Hi, Mark. just kind of curious. I know the Thorns have run out in a 4-2, 4-3, 4-2-3-1, 4-2-3-1, some version of that. Do you see that working with this new squad? Are you looking at other formations, and if so, kind of how do you see the squad running out possibly in the Challenge Cup in 21?
Yeah, without dodging the question of formation, I'll try to be as specific as possible. I think we've got lots of flexibility, and I don't think it'll be about, are we 4-4-2, are we 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3? I think what you'll see is that principles of the team in attack and defense and in both transitions will be the same no matter what. However, we have to be prepared to take advantage of space that opposition either give or try to deny, and what is going to bring out the best of our individual qualities in that game, home or away. So yeah, I think you'll see what will look like formation or positioning of players be very flexible, not just game to game, but during the game. But what hopefully you can feel, whether it's from your screen or later in the year in the stadium, you're going to feel the personality of this team. You're going to feel the mentality of this team. And on the tactical side, a team that knows it with the ball, how to attack the opponent, eliminate players, break lines, and get into similar and consistent positions to create and score goals. And same without the ball. Doesn't matter where the players will be positioned. We're going to be very aggressive. We want to attack the opponent without the ball, get after them in every moment we possibly can. I hopefully, without sounding like I'm dodging the question, that helps, that principles will be priority rather than what position or placement the players will be in.
Okay, we'll stay with Mark. We have a question from David Harding. David, go ahead and raise your hand. This is a formation question on the defense. David? Okay, we'll go on to another question. Okay, we have one for Gavin. Nicholas Garner. Go ahead and raise your hand, Nicholas. This is a question about European teams.
Okay, I'm unmuted. I guess this is for Gavin, but it'd be nice if Mark and MP could weigh in too. There's talk of the U.S. being a more athletic, physical league, with Europe being more technical. This, along with player pay, seems to influence where players choose to play or where their national teams wish them to play for a club, like we see Australian players going to Europe lately, for example. What are the Thorns, U.S. Soccer, and NWSL doing to manage this perception or to try to improve or maintain the tactical level of play in the U.S. without losing that physical advantage?
I don't think it just comes. Thank you for the question, by the way, and good evening, everyone. I don't think it's purely just a physical league. We're studying several things right now, and I think it's fair to say that the US and the NWSL do have the best women's league in the world. We don't consist of one or two teams that monopolize the league. There are a number of teams that are extremely competitive, and you can look at the number of players that the NWSL has exported. I think several years ago, you saw the majority of Australian internationals coming to the US to get games. Now, based on the calendar, based on the federations and their cycles, the European windows happen to fit into their cycle a little bit better. And you've seen the change in a lot of Australian players going to different European clubs. I think the Americans that you've seen go to Europe have purely been because of COVID and the uncertainty around whether the NWSL would have a league in 2020. And while they were wrong, the players did what was best for their individual careers. I think as a league, we are looking at ways to continue to get better. And I was on a call earlier this morning about the same question. And it comes down to pay, it comes down to quality of league, it comes down to the direction of the league and the ambitions of the league. And the NWSL has a commissioner in place now that is very forward thinking. And we're putting several things in place so the best players continue to stay in the US. And we don't have a situation like Macario going to Olympic Lyon. And while that was, I think, a mistake for us, it was very, very beneficial to look at this and say, how do we prevent it moving forward? Additionally, you're looking at us as a league, and the Thorns. The Thorns are the most popular women's professional soccer team in the world. So you look at fans, you look at relevance, you look at the following, you look at TV coverage. I think there's many, many things that separate us as a league, and they will continue to do so. And I see us strengthening in that area. On the football side, there will be a lot more money put into homegrown players and player development. So that's not anything I see changing. I will pass it over to Merritt and Mark.
I think we've already spent a lot of time on that one, Gavin. Brevity.
Sorry.
But good detailed answer.
We'll go on to Kristen Hammond. Kristen has a question about fans returning to Providence Park. Kristen, go ahead and raise your hand. Go ahead.
So my question is, are we going to have fans in the stands at Providence Park? Because there's nothing like that.
So I'll start and then I'll let Mike jump in. I would say that the short answer is my expectation is yes, and in a limited capacity, perhaps even as early as when we start in April for the Challenge Cup. And there's a detailed response about all the protocol we have in place, which Mike can maybe touch on, and the steps we have to go through with the state and everything else, and how vaccines are going to play into this. But just taking all that away for 1 minute, we have an advantage in that we are a primarily outdoor venue, and we will be mandating masks. Just with those two facts alone, going to a game at Providence Park spaced out is more safe than shopping for groceries. Now we're adding an immense amount of protocol to it to ensure the safety of our fans, of you all, of staff, and certainly of players. And so, Mike, why don't you talk about what that would entail?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Kristen, for the question. Thanks everybody for taking time out of your evening to join us. We really appreciate it, as Merritt said. Yeah, we're increasingly hopeful that we'll be able to have fans for our first soccer match this year, which will be second week in April, with a Thorns opener to be announced. We've obviously been following very closely what's happened in the industry, and since the pandemic, there have now been hundreds and hundreds of events across sports, across a variety of states that have held outdoor events safely. And so we've learned a lot from our counterparts around sports. We have a really excellent plan that we'll share with all of you when we're ready to roll it out, about new protocols and how the stadium's configured, and cashless, and transactions, and mobile ordering, and contactless, and ways of moving around the stadium that are new. A wide variety of really thoughtful protocols that will ensure everybody's safety. We've been in touch with the state really since the pandemic hit. They've been obviously swamped, but incredibly engaged and helpful. And we are hopeful that we'll have, as Merritt said, we'll probably start with a limited capacity, and then hopefully be able to build that up over the course of the year as the vaccine rollout continues to be successful.
And I actually talked to Kate Brown on Monday. I've been having a series of regular calls. So, but stay tuned there. But our expectation is optimistic.
Okay, we'll go to Scott Pennington. Scott has a related question on attendance in person. Go ahead and raise your hand, Scott. Go ahead.
Yeah, just related to that, when attendance does return and we're at a limited capacity from what normal would look like, can you say anything about how those attendance opportunities are going to be allocated?
Yeah, thank you, Scott. It's something we've given a lot of thought to, obviously. When we know what our capacity is, and we're hoping that it's in the neighborhood of 20% when we start, but again, that's not yet finalized. We're going to go to our annual members first in order of their priority, and give them the opportunity to purchase the number of seats they have in their account, but anywhere in the stadium. One note, however, we are going to go to the Riveters, our supporters, first, to give them a chance to buy seats in the supporter section. And a note to the Riveters out there, I'm sure we have many on the call, we're going to likely be required by the state to have everything in the north end be assigned reserve seats. So that'll be a big change for supporters, but again, a necessity because of the pandemic. So Scott, we'll go to probably out in increments of 3 or 4 games at a time, and give our annual members in order of priority a chance to buy anywhere in the stadium, which might be a really interesting opportunity for people to try different areas and experiment. But so we're going to go do it in that fashion, and hopefully we'll be able to at least accommodate most people, at least a subset of games in that fashion.
Okay, we have a question on the defense, which I think is best for Emily Menges, from David Harding. David, go ahead and raise your hand. I'll ask you for you, David. How is the defense looking for next season, including physicality?
Defense looks great. We are trying to pick up right where we left off last year. The goal is not to let any goals in, like always. And yeah, I mean, I think we left off at a really good place. And a lot of us were here during the off season, kind of training on our own, just building some of the skills that we wanted to work on. And so hopefully better than last year.
Let me piggyback on that, Emily. Did you feel like you had enough games with Becky to build up a chemistry with her?
No, I don't think we had enough games at all. But I think that, I mean, I've already learned tons from her. She's an incredible player, and the things that she offers in just her little comments and the way that she commands the field is pretty incredible. And it's a really cool person to play next to, because you don't really hear her unless you're playing next to her. And so, yeah, I would tell everyone to, if you can, watch her for the entirety of the 90 minutes, because she's a fascinating person to watch. But yeah, I hope to build that relationship more, and happy with everybody back there. And I'm glad that we kind of have this solid backline that we can launch off from.
I'm going to read another one. This one's for Merritt from Jeff Brown. His question is, we're seeing expansion of the league with Louisville and LA coming up in the next 2 years. What's the health of the existing clubs around NWSL? Are we at risk of seeing another dispersal as with Boston?
Well, and Sacramento too. I think Sacramento's been officially announced as well. So we've got 3 teams launching, and the first will be Kansas City. It's a good question, because I think you can't just focus on expansion teams. You have to constantly be looking inward and the health of existing teams. And I think there have been some clubs that have struggled in the past who have strengthened themselves a bit. You know, we've had some announcements recently. Washington Spirit, you know, have a new investor group that has some big names in it, and more ownership partners as well. You saw Sky Blue have some traction with some pretty big crowds when they played at Red Bull, they did the deal to play at Red Bull. It was Spirit that had the traction when they were at Audi Field, but I think I'm heartened by the arrangement that the Sky Blue have to move their venue, and they've done a number of things to upgrade as well. And Chicago's another team that's made some strides. And Houston, look, Houston won the Challenge Cup last year, and you know, they've got an exciting product on the field, and they've turned that around a little bit. And I'm hopeful that that translates to some more fan support. But honestly, I spend more time on NWSL than I do on MLS overall, day to day, and trying to get this league to a point where it's flourishing and really healthy. And I'm really optimistic about the entirety of the change we've seen. That doesn't mean we're still going to have issues. And you know, we had that hiccup with Salt Lake and this last year, and we've had some other ones. But you know, for every step back, there's been 2 steps forward as a league. And let's not forget that, you know, both of the other women's professional leagues that existed before NWSL, most recently WPS, didn't last past 3 years. And here we are, you know, in what, year 10, coming into year 10 now. Or year 9. I'm not a math guy, but anyway, it's a good question.
We're going to go back to Emily. John Laws has a question. Go ahead and raise your hand, John.
Oh, there we go. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm kind of curious. We have a new signing, Natalie Cuica, is that right? From Finland?
Yep.
How's she looking? And she seems to be a very versatile player. Are you seeing her mostly at center back, at fullback, if at fullback, right back, left back? I mean, kind of getting a sense for where we might see her on the pitch this season?
That is a better question for Mark. But in terms of her versatility and her playing style so far, it's only been a few weeks, but already I've really loved playing with her. She loves to play, which is something that our team tries to do, be brave out of the back end, kind of build the attack starting from us. So that has been cool to see. Yeah, you can tell she's smart, she's versatile, she's athletic, she's willing to learn. She already commented to me, she might not have said this to Mark, so this might be news to everybody. She's not used to this much coaching. And so she's just excited to be here and to learn as much as she can. So it's been cool.
Mark, you want to weigh in on that too?
I apologize to her a couple of weeks ago that we weren't coaching much. So I'm a bit worried about what she did or didn't get when she was in Europe. Because we've just been easing everyone in. And I think Menges, you can share, yeah, we've been very light so far. But I see that as a positive. I think she's getting a lot of great positive information about our identity and principles from players as well as staff. I think something that she shared with me is that everything is very, very clear, which is helping her adjust. And then on the position, we've hit the jackpot. I'm grateful for a lot of people behind the scenes that help with recruitment, but Gavin really stuck his teeth in here, and it was a long process. She can successfully play in all positions in the back line. And I think we have an option where she can play, depend on the opponent or depending on the specific way we feel we need to break lines in the area in all four positions. And I expect us to see her both at fullback, centre back at different times of the season, especially in this year with the Olympic period. So yeah, wonderful talent, but as you know, with Emily Menges, we only try to bring and keep great people, and I think we've got someone who can really fit our culture, and these players can put their arms around and support as she transitions here.
Okay, we'll go to Dave Waffle. Dave, go ahead and raise your hand. Dave has a question for Gavin on Tobin. There you go, Dave.
Thanks, Gavin. I'm just wondering if we will see Tobin Heath nutmeg an opponent on the Thorns pitch again. Thanks.
So, not right now, she's injured, but apart from that, Tobin's a player that was phenomenal for us for many, many years. And we got to the stage where we'd built a roster that had a number of national team players on it, and we were able to acquire Crystal Dunn. And that unfortunately meant that we weren't able to protect Tobin Heath. And Tobin's been a part of the Thorns family for many, many years and considered Portland to be home. Unfortunately, she was picked up in the expansion draft. I know Tobin, I think, would love to come back and play in Portland and be a member of the Thorns immediately and at some stage in the future. So you never know what the future holds. She's a
There we
talent.
go. That's a good answer.
Hey, sorry. But she is a talented player, and I think any team that has her is fortunate. And with her considering Portland to be home, it's a player, like I said, we'd love to have back. But whether she comes back to the US prior to the Olympics or not, we'll wait and see. And even post-Olympics, her future is to be determined.
Okay, we have a question for Mike Golub on broadcast from Ann McManaman. Ann, can you raise your hand, please? Okay, go ahead.
Hi, so it's true. There is nothing like watching a game at Providence, But if you're only going to be able to do 20%, I still want to see all the games. Have you guys been able to work out some sort of package that we can either watch online or on a TV or some sort of viewing place?
Yeah, and so last year was the first year of a really important new deal that the NWSL as a league had with CBS Sports. And the Challenge Cup was the first event that was carried under the CBS banner. And when I talk about CBS, it's CBS Big Network, which we were on a couple of times. It's CBS Sports Network, which is a sports channel. And then it's CBS All Access, which is a direct-to-consumer streaming option. And as Merritt mentioned in his opening remarks, the NWSL ratings, our ratings specifically, were off the charts up last year, in large part due to the CBS deal, while other sports were downwardly trending. So this year, every one of our games will be on one of those networks. So some people who are cord cutters may not have CBS, but the CBS All Access, which will be the majority of the games, again, is a $5.99 a month direct-to-consumer product that you can get on your tablet, on your phone, on your desktop, or on your smart TV.
Okay, we'll stay with Mike. Pete has a question on dining. Pete Wojtovich, go ahead and raise your hand. There you go.
Yeah, hi there. If you can hear me.
Yep.
Yeah, the team in the stadium, when they did the new expansion, they made a huge deal about all the new restaurants. And then we show up to the season and find out that none of us annual members that didn't upgrade into those sections can even get to enjoy any of them. What are your plans to allow annual members access to the new dining opportunities, whether in a 20% occupancy environment, or eventually we'll get back to 100%?
Hey, Pete, thanks a lot for the question. We get this question a lot in different forms. Let me take the second part first, and that is, in the limited capacity pandemic world, everybody's going to have access to mobile ordering. Menus are going to be limited or scaled down a bit, just simply because of the constraints because of the pandemic. You'll order and then be able to, it'll tell you what stand nearest you, and you'll pick up, contactless, pick up your order. So we're excited about that model. We think that model has a really good benefit to our fans, even beyond the pandemic. As it relates to variety of food, we've been very thoughtful about what is where around the stadium. So, for example, on the west side, some of you might sit on the west side, we have a tamale and taco stand that you can only find there. For those of you who sit on the north end, there is Podna's, a really great local purveyor of barbecue that you can only find there. You can't find in any of the new sections. So every section has its sort of own identity and its own offerings, and none are the same. And so we don't offer all of it to everybody, obviously for obvious reasons. So there's a variety that we think a good variety that I think we strike. We're always open to, certainly around beer. There's a great variety that we've really worked hard at trying to maintain. We're always open to suggestions, but that's sort of how we approached it, and we're really thoughtful how we allocated it, and hopefully we're trying to give something for everybody, no matter where you sit.
I would say also that we changed from center plate to Levy, and that happened in mid 2019, and I think people really haven't been able to experience some of the changes. But one challenge we do have is a stadium that's got newer infrastructure with wider concourses. Fans are free to peruse the entire, rectangular geometry of the stadium to see what all sorts of stands have. Our concourses are a lot more narrow, and people are often, kind of contained in the area that they're sitting. That is a tough one to solve for. So obviously we want the food to be good everywhere, but you can't have every food item at every stand, that kind of variety. So that is a challenge we have at the stadium. That's not to say we can't improve, but I think a lot of times people are unaware of, what types of items are offered elsewhere around the stadium.
Okay, we have one from Neil August from Mark Parsons on AD. Go ahead and raise your hand, Neil. There you go.
Yeah, I was just going to ask. We didn't get a chance to see AD last season due to injury, and I was wondering how she's doing. Is she healthy? Is she going to be full strength this season?
Yes, AD's doing great. Bella Bixby also had an injury, and both are looking good, almost in full training. They're in every session. We've just been managing their return to play with some conditions. We're almost ready to get rid of the safety arc that we've put around them in our games. But to simply answer with AD, one of our very good defenders had a little mishaps yesterday in our 11v11. Tyler Lucy broke through one-on-one, and AD France came up big time and saved that defender from that mistake. And that's what she's there for, and that's what she'll say, that she's there to save us when some stuff goes wrong.
Could not have been Menges.
Getting all the mistakes out now. Don't worry.
Okay, we'll go back to Mike Golub. I have one from Dave Vesey on season ticket holders. Go ahead and raise your hand, Dave. Go ahead.
Dave, there you go, Dave.
Okay, yeah, since I hear that the stadium is going to be at about 20% capacity and determining on who will get to go to the games, if some of us are hesitant to go because of COVID, I know it's a different sport, but I heard the Patriots were willing to honor their season ticket holders. If they didn't want to go this year, then they could honor their season tickets for next year. Is that something that the franchise is thinking of possibly doing?
Dave, we thank you for the question. We are definitely going to do that. So Dave, if you're, for whatever reason, still reticent to come back when we're at limited capacity, we're going to give you the option to use your ticket credits that you have on account for this year, and whatever you don't use this year, you'll be able to apply to next year. So absolutely. At some point when we're, well beyond 50% and closer to full capacity, we'll probably go to the more traditional model of, expecting folks to use their season tickets. But until then, and during a limited capacity, which we know we will be for at least a good chunk of the season, if not more, it'll be completely optional for annual members to deploy their ticket credits.
Okay, we have a question for Mark from Albin Jones. Go ahead and raise your hand, Albin. There you go.
Play quite a bit. I'm very excited about her acquisition. What are your plans for her role on the field now?
Yeah, great question, and I think we're all very excited to see this team that's coming together to get back on the field. Lots of individuals, and especially Crystal, and I think especially Crystal is because she's an attacking player. Menges will joke in training, look, the players that win championship, the defenders come this way, and the ones who sell tickets go up the other end for finishing practice. We can't wait to see Crystal. She'll be in the final third. That's where I think she was born to play. I think that's where she has the most fun and the most joy and the most success. For us, we'll play it depends on the space. Like I've said previously on shape, we can play with one attacking midfielder, two attacking midfielders. We've played with three attacking midfielders in different phases of the game. If we can get her in a place between the midfield and back line where she has the choice to hurt the opponent in different ways, I think we'll be in a really, really good place. So we've seen that. We saw that in Washington with Crystal. She played as a false nine, playing between lines. You saw her in Carolina as a one of the 210s. For us, she has to be in this area of the field, and can't wait to see that come together. And look, we all hope it happens immediately, but there's a lot of new players here. We've got a lot of great people that should speed it up. But yeah, we're going to need a runway, and just looking forward to getting everyone into training, hopefully early March, to start seeing what that looks like.
Thanks, Mark. We have one from Matt Kleinman regarding the role of Portland Police at Providence Park for Mike Golub. Go ahead and raise your hand, Matt. There you are. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Excellent. So as you know, some people find police a calming presence, but the history of policing in America means that many of our neighbors experience police as an aggressive force, and police presence in the stadium or other places as a sign that that space isn't meant for them. And especially as we work on having the stadium represent the diversity of the Portland community, especially racial diversity, can we end police details at games?
Thank you, Matt. It's obviously an issue we've been thinking about a lot, given the spate of horrific events that have occurred over the last year. We've had a lot of discussions with the 107ers and subcommittees about this very topic. Let me say a few things up top. We have, over our 8 years with the Thorns and our 10 years with the Timbers, reduced our reliance on PPD at games. We are now down for a 20,000 person attended Thorns game down to about a dozen. Keep in mind, Matt and group, that we're a city-owned building, and so there are some requirements vis-a-vis our deal with the city that Portland Police need to have a presence. And I also want to note that in our 10 years Timbers, 8 years Thorns, we've had virtually no issues, no events of consequence. And that's really a credit to our fan base, but also I think it's a credit to our security staff and how we've managed it. And so we're really proud of that body of work, and not to say we can't improve, not to say that we're not always looking at it, but we're likely, given our commitment to the city and requirement of the city, the fact that we've really reduced the number to really a bare minimum of about a dozen for a massive event, we're going to likely perpetuate that plan this year and beyond.
And I just add a couple points to that. There here is a last line of defense in doing things like having canine bomb sniffing units. I mean, we've got a responsibility to keep everybody in the stadium safe. And imagine on January 6th, on one of the darkest days in our nation's history, with what happened at the Capitol, if we didn't have police in the Capitol. So there's a obligation we have as a city-owned building, but also an obligation we have to the safety of every fan in the stadium, and they're a last line of defense here, and an important one.
Okay, we'll go to Gavin. We have one from Nicholas Garner. Go ahead and raise your hand, Nicholas. This question is about making players feel welcome and safe in Portland when attracting talent. There you go.
Unmuted. Okay, this actually follows up well on the last question, and this is kind of to Merritt and Gavin, and Mike can weigh in on as well. What are some things that Peregrine, Thorns, NWSL, and U.S. Soccer do, if anything, to influence politics and culture in ways that might help international or other marginalized at-risk people feel safe and welcome playing in Portland and in the U.S.? Is there an awareness that things like homophobia, xenophobia, racism, etc., might influence the ability to develop, attract, and retain talent? And is there a role or responsibility for you all to try to mitigate or overcome that? Thanks.
I think Mike, I'll ask you, Mike, as well, to weigh in here. As far as when we look at the culture of the teams and look at recruitment, look at players, Portland's always been a destination of choice, both on the men's and for both the men's and the women's programs. And a lot of that is based on some obvious factors: our competitiveness, the stadium, the fans, the environment. Then there's down to the demographics of the teams and the makeup of the teams. We're very international. We're very diverse as an organization. And when you start to look at the teams, players do feel very, very welcome within the stadium. They feel very welcome in the city. Now, I do think that dynamic has changed. I think the landscape has shifted in the last year, and we've got that as a challenge to overcome. The positives are on both the Timbers and the Thorns. We've had mainstays, the Charas, the Valeries, Sinclair, Haran, that can speak to what Portland is and speak to the bigger picture about how they have found Portland to be their home and how they love being here and playing for what they consider to be some of the best teams in this country. So from a player standpoint and from a staffing standpoint on the soccer side, I think we've overcome that. I think the players do feel very connected to the organization, and through the organization feel connected to the city. And Mike, I'll pass it on to you.
Let me weigh in before Mike. I would say that since day one, the Thorns and Timbers have stood for inclusivity. You know, stop right after that. I mean, that's what that's everything that's been in our DNA and everything that we've embraced, and something that I couldn't be more proud of. And you know, with the events of the last year, we've added the educate, elevate, and engage social justice bar to our efforts in and around the community as well. And does all this mean that we can't do better? No, absolutely not. But I think that we've been a torchbearer in many ways for inclusivity, and you know, that's something that's very meaningful to our fans as well. And it's an ethos that we share. So, you know, and I think Emily, if she were talking, we'd talk about that in the locker room. I don't want to put words in her mouth, and she's welcome to weigh in as well. But it's something I'm really proud of.
Yeah, from I think the bottom up too, which is us on the field, we've done the best we can to kind of continue conversation, educate ourselves, and create a culture where everyone, I would hope, feels safe and able to share, and staff included. We've had these massive conversations where a lot of people have been able to express their fears or their hopes, or just kind of get things off their chest. So yeah, we are also doing our part. So that's been great for our team culture as well.
Okay, we'll go to Kristen Hammond. Kristen has a question for Mike Golub on concessions. Go ahead and raise your hand, Kristen. There you go.
So my question is, I respect the whole wearing the masks. I'm just wondering how you do that if you're doing concessions. I guess when you would get back to your seat, you would take your mask off, but if you were to walk around the stadium, obviously have them on. But I just want to know how the mask thing is going to be regulated. Are they going to have people that normally help you to your seats say, put your mask on? I guess that's my question.
Yeah, thank you, Kristen. We're going to have, even in a reduced capacity environment, we're going to have full complement of event staff. And many of you have gotten to know the event staff in your areas, and they're awesome, awesome people. And we're going to go through a lot of training with them. They're going to get temperature checks. They're all wearing masks. And on a normal game, they're on the lookout for people who have problems, people who are ill, a broken seat. And so it's going to be no different when they're going to be on the lookout for people who aren't necessarily observing what we asked them to do about the mask. Also, I want to really make it clear, we're going to communicate like heck all of these new protocols. We are going to over communicate with all of you because it's all new, right? And it's a lot of reconditioning, and it's a lot of, so we're going to communicate like heck. We're going to be creating videos. We're going to really, really make this as easy and understandable for all of you as we can. But as it relates to a specific question, Kristen, people are going to be expected to wear masks. And what we have found in some other NFL venues and MLS venues that have had fans is that fans are asked to wear masks when they have a drink or eat. They obviously take it off, but then are asked to put it right back on. And I really believe our Thorns fans will be highly observant of that protocol. And so that's how we're going to work it.
And just to be clear, they'd be carrying their concessions back to their seat where they're socially spaced out, and outside, and then that's when they could take it off to eat, not when they were walking through the concourses.
Yeah, good add, Merritt. And wanted to add one thing. We're going to be allocating basically our seating manifest, if you will, across the stadium in 2s and 3s and 4s. The seats that are not used are going to be tied up and unusable. So people will be mandated to sit in socially distanced manner throughout the stadium.
We have a concession question from Scott Pennington. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, just specifically on the concessions, anything you guys can say about the long-term offerings in terms of more vegan options?
Oh, you're hitting Mike right in his sweet spot. You guys have a lot of concessions questions, by the way. Mike's married to a vegan, so and he took me to one of the worst restaurants I've ever eaten at in my life, which is a vegan restaurant when I was first out in Portland, and I'll never forgive him for it. But I love vegans too, even though I'm not a vegan. So we do need to up our offerings there, Mike. But I'll let you talk.
Yeah, near and dear to my heart, Scott. I had a vegan meal at Pixie Retreat tonight, by the way. For those of you who haven't tried it in the Pearl Pixie Retreat, it's killer. I turned on Kling to it, by the way, because Kling's a vegan, and she knew every restaurant, but she didn't know Pixie Retreat. So Kling's a vegan. Yeah, Scott, we've got a lot of vegans, in our audience. It's funny. People say they want healthy food, and everybody ends up buying hot dogs and pretzels. But point taken. We do have a lot of vegan offerings throughout the stadium. We've got salads and we've got vegan tacos, but I think we need, from the inference in your question, we need to do a better job at communicating that. We do have a variety of offerings. They are popular because we do have a lot of vegans, my wife included.
We're going to stay on concessions. Mark and Abby Dawson have a question.
You guys are making me hungry. I haven't had dinner yet. It's like the 5th freaking concessions question.
I love seeing an excited Mike Golub, though. This is awesome.
I mean, nothing will get Mike excited more than food, so keep them coming.
Ahead,
yeah,
Mark.
I was wondering if you were ever going to offer dark beers again instead of just all IPAs.
Is that you, Marvin, who asked the question?
Yeah. I was just wondering if they were ever going to offer dark beers again, porters or stouts, instead of just 20 kinds of IPA.
Colin will follow up and publish the list of the beers that we do offer. Where do you sit, Marvin? Because we have a variety of varieties around the building, but Double Post, which is our bar, our tap room behind 107 on the north end, has, I want to say, 20 beers on tap. And I think, don't quote me on this, because
they have a number of stouts. They have a number, and Mike's, by the way, he's not a drinker either. So this is, the vegan one was his sweet spot. The beer spot is not his sweet spot. Gavin could answer this one better because he loves beer, not at games, and always safely.
It depends on the result.
It depends on the result. That's right. We're never losing to the Courage 6-0 again, Emily. That's the night that many beers were consumed here. I can promise you that. And Mark can't even laugh about that one. The conversation just got ugly. But anyway, we do have dark beers, and there's no question that we've done too many IPAs, in my opinion, as well. But that's because so many fans love IPAs here, and so the idea is try to make everybody happy. But we've got a ton of IPA enthusiasts who want only like a certain IPA. So we're trying to thread the needle. But my understanding is we actually do have quite a few dark beers. But I appreciate you bringing it up.
I'm going to go ahead and read George's question since we're on topic. Why not more gluten-free beer at the stadium?
This one's for Mark or Emily. You guys answer it. Not to make light of the question, because in all seriousness, we 100% take it very seriously that variety of beer choices is something that's desired, and we made a bunch of changes along these lines in 2019, in the latter half of 2019, and you would have seen more of that in 2020 last year. So for those of you who came to the 2 Timbers games we actually hosted, Dallas and Nashville, to the extent that any of you Thorns fans are also Timbers fans, you would have seen that. But we did make some changes on the variety side. Unfortunately, we just haven't, we weren't open last year.
Okay, I have one from Rhonda Adams. Go ahead and raise your hand, Rhonda. This is for Mark and Emily. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask about what games you're looking forward to playing next year and what teams you think are going to be interesting to play with.
Menges.
Can't wait to beat Houston.
You can't wait to throttle North Carolina. Just say it.
Yeah, well, them too, but specifically Houston right now. It's fresh. Yeah, but I'm just excited to get some games under our belt. We have a scrimmage against OL Reign in a few weeks, and that's where my head's at. Even though Mark wants it to be a practice game, none of us are going to take it as a practice game.
Yeah, I do you know what I absolutely love? I mean, all jokes aside, love that answer from Menges is that, and I'll still answer your question. She's only looking at what's in front of her, and that's, yeah, we got a training game on Saturday, and then we have a game against OL Reign next week, and that's a winning mentality and staying focused on the process. And yeah, I was talking yesterday. I was trying to make sure that the team have a really brave outlook on what our preseason looks like in attacking the opportunity to grow and learn. And whether it's a training game, whether it's against Timbers Academy, whether it's against OL Reign or whoever else, that we're willing to try things. And I used the word training game when I said OL Reign, and the whole group started correcting me that that's not a training game. And yeah, I love this group, and I love the mentality of this group. And to answer the question about the league, I think that seeing KC come into the league, I think that's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. The Thorns are really unique, and there's a lot of clubs will build rivalries against the Thorns. And you know, when I was in Washington years ago, you know, looking at the first home game was always the first thing when I saw the schedule, and then it was, when are we playing Portland, or when are we visiting Portland? So I've been on the other side, and throughout the course of the last 5.5 years, it just seems like another team, whether it's them or it's us, a strong connection to want to beat each other develops. And more recently, North Carolina Courage, Houston, the team, you know, we weren't our best that day. I think all of us, including me, weren't at our best, and we really want that one back. Challenge Cup, it's a summer tournament, but every game is important to us. So that's there, but there's some really fun and interesting teams that we're looking forward to play. And the fact that there's been so much change across the teams, a lot of teams have gone through transition like we did. And for us to be able to finally put everyone on the field and play a lot of games this year is something we're focused on. And yeah, it doesn't matter who we're playing. We're attacking everyone. We're pressing everyone. And we just want to make sure we show our personality and represent what this community is about. And this community is about togetherness and coming together, and having a team that represents that is important, and it's on all our minds. And yeah, we'll stay focused there. And anyone who wants to get in our way, good luck, because we're coming full throttle and looking forward to it.
If we can stay healthy and manage the Olympics, which is a challenge, and health is always a challenge too, but Gavin and Mark have done an amazing job building this roster. It shouldn't matter who we're playing. This is going to be a dominant team.
Okay, we'll go to Jeff Brown. Jeff has another question for Emily. Go ahead and raise your hand, Jeff. Let's see if I can find you. Yeah, I can ask it for you. Congratulations on the contract extension. We're so happy to hear you'll be here for a couple more years. I know that you've been a team rep with the NWSL union. Can you talk about your experience with that? Are players as a whole engaged in union matters?
Yeah, it's been really fun. I've been the treasurer since we started. It's been a little bit of a situation of the blind leading the blind at some times, but it's definitely a learning experience, and it's been a lot of fun trying to engage as many players as possible. But yeah, we're only getting more player engagement and more people who want to be involved in different ways and have different ideas that can help players as a whole. So yeah, it's been really cool. And I mean, kudos to the ownership of all the teams. They've been really responsive. The league, we've created a really good relationship with the league, especially with the new commissioner, Lisa Baird. So yeah, it's been really fun, and it's all good things, all positive things so far.
Okay, we have a couple for Gavin. Let's go with Chris Thomas. Chris, go ahead and raise your hand. There you go.
Okay, there we go. I've heard that there's been a
Chris, you're gonna have to speak up. We can't hear you.
I've heard there's been a change in the league pay structure so that a few players can be paid larger amounts by clubs to keep the key players. Is that right? And if it is, could you talk about it a little?
Yes, great question, actually. So, Chris, the league had allocation money previously, and what they've done is basically triple it, quadruple it, actually. So every team now has up to about 400,000 in allocation money, and the premise for that is to keep the best players in this league, as well as create more excitement with trades, with transfers, internal, et cetera, et cetera. So some of those, some of the components in which you can use that money for is to keep some of the better players in this country. We have a couple of players that we haven't announced yet that I'll drop, even though it's been rumored. We have signed Crystal Dunn and Lindsay Horan to long-term contracts with the Portland Thorns. And those two players were previously signed with the Federation. The introduction of the allocation money has enabled us as a club to go after several players, actually. Not only does it benefit those players, but it trickles down to every other player in the roster by freeing up cap space, therefore increasing the overall average wage, etc. So with Crystal Dunn and Lindsay Horan, they would have been coming out of contract with the Federation. The CBA ends at the end of this year, and the allocated contracts were only through to the end of 2021. So for us as a club, it was very important to get those two players in particular under contract long-term. So one, we acquired tremendous players, tremendous people, and great assets, but also they're two players internationally that would have been heavily recruited and potentially had the option of going overseas. So with the introduction of allocation money, we were able to keep those two individuals specifically and sign them to long-term contracts. So it is following a similar direction to MLS.
And I think what's interesting about allocation money, and I'll shut up, but that you didn't mention, Gavin, is when we introduced it, there was a feeling that it would just be used on international talent. And it's certainly will be used on some international talent because NWSL has to do a better job of getting top international players to come here. But a lot of it's being used on U.S. talent, as you see with the deals that Gavin just mentioned as well.
We have time for one more for Gavin before we have to let him go, but we're gonna stick on for a little while longer and try to get to the rest of your questions. So we'll start with Ann McManaman. Go ahead, Ann.
So my question had been about international players. So I love all the U.S. players, and well done on getting Lindsay and Crystal in long-term deals. You guys have done a great job. Thanks for your support of women's sports. But I always love our international players too. And I was wondering if there was anything you could tease out. I know that until those are locked up, you can't, but I miss Amandine Henry like every day.
You know, Amandine Henry is a player that we continue to discuss and want to bring back to the club. And
Mandy, bring back Mandy. I'm going to start that campaign myself. I want to bring her back more than anybody.
And one of the things I was going to touch on earlier, allocation money is an investment from the owners, and I personally want it to triple so we can bring back a player like Mandy. So if it's got merits backing, I'm all for it. But that would be a special player. And again, think of key players. Nadine Angra, we were able to acquire her, and she's still a very, very big part of the club. So we do value the internationals, the international spots. Once you are signed as an international, there is an understanding that you have to be better than what we can develop locally, or better than an American player. So the internationals that we bring in will either be players for the future or players that can have an immediate impact on our starting 11. And that's primarily how we use foreign spots. What I would say is when we're looking at succession planning, one of the players that we're tracking, and I can see Mark probably texting me, telling me to keep it quiet, but we are looking at one of the world's best young goalkeepers to put under the tutelage of Nadine Angra. And this is a player that, you know, may stay overseas for a couple of years, but we are looking at one or two younger foreigners to acquire, to continue their development, to bring them in. So when they do join the Thorns, they can have an immediate impact over wins and be a part of the starting 11.
we had an international player who's one of, I'd say, a top 5 international player in the world, set to come here last year. And COVID basically killed that deal. And then we got the opportunity to acquire Crystal. And I think given the position that that player would have played, things ended up working out pretty well, because we're extremely grateful that we have Crystal Dunn as a Portland Thorn, who's a top 3 player from any country, in a lot of people's estimation in the world. So anyway, we continue to look at international players and are grateful for the contributions we've had.
I would love to jump in as well, if that's okay. I think especially coming into this year, we're normally looking at losing 8, 9, 10 players during the Olympic year. I think the balance this year is going to be half that, which is obviously has its pros and its cons in the long term. Depends how the roster's built. The ambition of front office here is always to have the best young Americans, the best North American players, and the best international players. I would say the contact and the recruitment efforts from everyone involved over the last few years, we saw it slow down a little bit in 18-19 on the interest of how many people were willing to move and change countries. In the last 4 months, the people that we're always scouting and trying to identify talent and build relationships, but the people that have reached out to Gavin wanting to come this way, so without us making initial contact, from only this week, some of the best players in the world wanting to come to Portland Thorns. And I hope to say NWSL, but in the last 4 months, yes, specifically with our club, more people have wanted and been willing to come, and it hasn't fit. It hasn't fit because that player may not start here. One of the very best players in the world wouldn't start because of the roster that's been built. And for Merit to be able to invest that money, they need to be having a big impact. And at the same time, I love what Gavin talked about, his vision on a very young, talented goalkeeper. We saw with Ellie Carpenter, she's come in and spent 2 years, and a fantastic piece of business to be able to get her to Lyon. It's women's soccer growing up. This is a business. And if we can develop players and develop talent for them to win trophies for our club or to sell, is incredible. And it just shows a long way since I started coaching the league 8 years ago. It's come a long way. And it's come a long way because there's people at clubs, ownership, GMs that are pushing those boundaries and pushing the NWSL to think bigger. And a commissioner, obviously, who has come in and done an exceptional job.
Okay, I have one for Gavin. I'll read from Cynthia Gillum. How long will Sync play for us?
Great question. Sync is 37 years old and continues to show a love and passion for the game. I think she's a player, and Emily will talk about this, but every single Thorns player and NWSL player and players around the world look to Sync as a role model within the sport, both in the way that she's lived her life and how she continues to perform. I do not want to put a timeline on Sync. I keep thinking this could be it. This could be the last year. What I do know is as soon as she is ready to hang up her boots, she will have a part in this club. And I think she's got a lot to offer the game in general, but she is a person that we want to keep in the club. As a player, I do see us having to manage her minutes. I do see us having to look at her international career, looking at the Olympics, and also for us as a Thorns team and where we want to go, and using Sync not only to benefit wins, but also to bring through some of the other players that we have in this club. And that is a tough job for Mark, to be able to manage a world-class player at what we think is the end of her career. But these are conversations that are ongoing with Mark, with Sync. I'll speak to Sync about it, but I think we will see it, and she'll know when it's the right time.
Can we have one
build her a statue? People, I get tech tweets and stuff saying build Valeria or Chara a statue. Sync has given everything to this club. She really has. And Emily, what a presence she is in the locker room. And she's not the most extroverted person with the media and on social media, but she's special. She's world class. The very definition of world class.
If she plays tonight, the US-Canada result could be very different with the opportunities Canada missed.
We'll go to Ben Bradley, who has one on draft picks. Go ahead and raise your hand, Ben. There you go.
Hi, I am intrigued by the draft choices that the Thorns made this year, and while I understand they are playing the spring season in the NCAA, when might we expect to see them in Portland, and how would they integrate into the existing team? Are there roster spots being held for their possible arrival, or how is that going to work?
Mark, you want me to take this one or you? So early on, we were in touch with, just to give you a bit of background, every single college coach for the 4 girls that we took. And there was a simple understanding that once the draft was over, we would leave the players alone. So without getting into great detail and disclosing who will be joining us after the spring season and who will be joining us for preseason start of 2022, what I can say is we will be getting 2 players and 2 will be staying in college. So the 2 that we will be bringing in, 100%, there are roster spots open for them, and we do expect them to contribute. We just have to look at their performances in their college season and look to integrate them with COVID, etc., with COVID guidelines, and being able to put them in a position to be successful. Mark.
Yeah, nothing to add. I think an extensive work was behind the scenes to make sure we knew as much as we could. Couldn't be happier with the talent, of course, but the type of people. I think you could look at it with what Gavin just said is we've injected the team with some short-term quality that we hope to develop in the medium and long term. And then we've also taken care of next year with a couple of players that by the time next year rolls around, they could be a first, a second, a third pick in the first round. The way things could pan out. So yeah, bit of time, and we're just excited. We've got 2 of them playing against each other tomorrow with Sam and Amira, and look forward to supporting and cheering them both on. And yeah, it's going to be an exciting journey, and it's a weird way of doing it. They're normally here by now, and we get to build a relationship while they're trying to win trophies for their college team. And Gavin's done a great job of speaking individually with the college coaches to build that relationship, connection, and trust with them to make sure that we're all here trying to look after the player, and I think that's paid dividends, and we couldn't be happier with the current pathway for them to come into the Thorns.
We have one from Kirsten for Emily. Kirsten, go ahead and raise your hand. Go ahead.
All right. So what has been the most effective way that you've been growing as a player during the past year, especially since it has looked so different than usual?
Oh, I think something that we really focus on as a team at practice is focusing on every single movement and every single pass, every single touch on the ball. And I think especially last year where we didn't necessarily know when our next game was going to be or what our season was going to look like, we kind of all took this mindset of, okay, well, even if we don't have a season, even if we can't win a championship necessarily, we can still progress as a team and progress as players. And so I think that has been very good for me even to bring forward into this season. I mean, every pass matters, every defensive action matters. So I think that focusing on me and what I can control and every moment of practice.
Okay, David Harding has one for Emily as well. Go ahead and raise your hand, David. All set?
Yeah. Hi, Emily. Thanks for all your great defense and hustle over the years and that stop in that championship game. How many miles do you run in a game, do you think?
I don't know.
My technical staff would say too many. I actually think I'm very consistent. We went over our numbers last year. I run about 10 kilometers a game on average, which is not the most, actually. I think Kling consistently runs the most. But yeah, I am constantly told that I inefficiently move on the field and I do too much moving.
The context there, Menges is near the top every session and close to every game, and the centre back probably shouldn't be running that much. I know Gavin, when he played centre back, certainly didn't run that much, but Menges is great engine, relentless. We want to sometimes calm him down and less running. To be there for those big moments, like I think your question mentioned, or someone else's, the championship one, when McDonald cut her and Menges recovered to make that block, which was, almost game changing. It's as good as a goal. But we're still working on that. 7-8 years into it, we're still trying to calm Menges down, but that's what we love about her. She's all in, all action, every moment.
We have time for one more question, and we will make this town hall available on our website, and we'll send it out to you. So if you missed anything to begin with, you won't miss it. And we'll go to Nicholas Garner, who has a question for Mark. Go ahead, Nicholas.
Okay. What kind of tactical, stylistic knowledge and practice parallels and integration are there between Thorns and Timbers? Do you and Geo talk shop with any regularity? Is there an effort to have a similar stylistic identity between the two clubs, or is it more about the talent available?
Yeah,
Thanks.
I'd love to share some thoughts on this, but if Gavin would also like to touch on it, because I think that with Gavin and also Merritt in wanting to have a very specific culture. Since Gio has come in, the way he has opened his heart and his mind to not just me, but the Thorns staff, the Thorns players, and Gio's staff, who just like my staff are very, very key. I'm not successful at any time without the staff that are around doing a lot of important work. Gio's helped build a culture that I believe has been the vision of the club, and having collaboration and having connection, like you said. So specifically, sharing of resources and programs. When we look at analysis software that we've presented to each other, what type of analysis software we use and how we can maximize it. Sharing how we look at data, how we present to the team, how we prepare a team, not just training sessions, but the other parts, even around culture and leadership. It took a big change, and I think we will love Gio for a lot of the stuff on the field. And I'm fortunate and privileged that I get to know him off the field, and he's just got the biggest heart. He represents what I think this sitting community is about. But I also want to say it's unique to work in a club and coach in a club. And I actually presented on this topic a little bit on my course that I'm currently on a few days ago. The management of this club wants to see the men's team, the women's team be its absolute best, have a togetherness about them, have a team first mentality and culture. And we've really seen that come fruition over the last 3, 4, 5 years, specifically with how integrated every member of staff is. Gavin, I think you've been instrumental in obviously that vision. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you managed to do that.
I think Merritt said it when he said inclusion and then full stop. That goes beyond just the basics. And when we look at the sport on the Thorns side and on the men's side, there is a lot of collaboration. I think we do want one club, even though we have two logos within the club. It is definitely one club. And Mark is being modest. It goes both ways. Gio learns from Mark, Mark learns from Gio, and there's a lot of crossover between the players as well. And very healthy relationships that I think ultimately benefit football and benefit the city and benefit the Timbers and Thorns. So from my perspective, it comes from having knowledgeable, good people with high EQ that can not only manage players, but manage their environment and continue to build culture. And that's a collaboration between the business side and the sporting side. I think it's unique. I think it is very progressive in the way that we try and tackle things in this club. And I think Mike and I have different presentations next week where we're involving different individuals from both sides. We say both sides of the club, even though it's one club, from the business and the sports, just to make sure that we're all heading in the same direction. And when it comes down to Timbers and Thorns, that is still one direction. We want, there is a crossover, I think, Mike, of about 30% of the fan base between Timbers and Thorns. And we don't want to have to re-educate our fans on what they expect from a professional team that plays in Portland. So there are some basic ingredients that we expect, and we expect to be dominant on our home field. Especially, we expect to have the ball. We expect to dominate certain categories with entries into the 18 final third, possession in the attacking half, denying goal scoring opportunities. So there are certain metrics that we will put into play as KPIs that we use to govern and to critique the performances on both the Timbers and the Thorns. And when you start to look at the makeup of the players, there's actually a lot of crossover with the type of player that you will see in certain positions as well. So the philosophy is top down, and it's embraced by the coaches, and then they get to put in their own ingredients, obviously. Thank you.
Really want to thank everybody who tuned in, and thank, all the folks who asked questions. And we really, really, really want to see you this season. We're hopeful we will. And it has all the makings of a really special season for the Portland Thorns. Thanks.